Hey everyone, just check out this new isekai for this July season. Reincarnating into a fantasy world with overpowered abilities sounds easy, right? But for Haruto, the beginning of his journey wasn't that smooth. Because his incredible magical ability couldn't be measured, his parents, the king and queen of that kingdom, abandoned him in a forest at the mercy of various monsters. Fortunately, Haruto manages to survive and embarks on a new life far from his true parents. And that's the story we're going to follow here today. But before we start, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos, okay? Let's get to the recap. The anime starts by showing a bit of Haruto's life, and he tells us that 5 years ago, when he was in the last year of junior high, he stopped going to school because of intense bullying. Since then, he became a recluse and just spent his days playing games and watching anime with no hope of changing that. One day, while watching something on his phone, a bright light shines and transports him to the sky. There, he meets a goddess who congratulates him, saying that due to circumstances, he has been reincarnated. The goddess explains that in this new world, magic is absolute, and the amount of magic one has determines their worth. After saying that, she adds that to compensate for his miserable life until then, she will give him an overpowered ability and a lot of magical capacity. And then she tells him to enjoy his new life very much, but you'll soon see that this goddess is clueless and will leave Haruto in a mess. Then Haruto agrees and says that he wants to reincarnate. In his thoughts, he says that he will use his overpowered ability to live an easy life in that world. Finally, he is reincarnated, but unlike what he thought, he appears as a baby. He quickly realizes that he was born into the royal family of that world, his father is the king, and his mother is the queen. Haruto is happy about this, as he thinks he will have an easy life. Right after his birth, the king orders that they perform a magical evaluation on Haruto, as magic is what matters in that world. Remember what I said about the goddess interfering in Haruto's life? Well, she gave him so much power that the measuring instruments can't quantify his incredible abilities, leading them to believe that Haruto has almost no magical ability. After learning this, they don't hesitate and decide to sacrifice the boy, as no one can know that the son of the king and queen is so weak. They will simply claim that he was stillborn. Then, the king orders them to discard the baby in a forest far away from the palace. And so it is done. Haruto finds himself in a basket in the middle of the forest, unable to move because he is just a baby. He remembers his ability to use barriers and tries to use it to escape. He tries to imagine it and quickly manages to create his first barrier. Haruto finds it easy and is able to manipulate it as he wishes. He soon activates a barrier around himself and begins to fly. And at that moment, a gigantic wolf appears behind him and tells everyone watching the anime to subscribe to the channel and give that thumbs up to the video, so make sure to subscribe, otherwise, he will bite you. Actually, the wolf appears and tries to snap at him. However, his barrier is very strong, and the wolf doesn't make a scratch on Haruto. After that, he creates several smaller barriers and shoots them at the wolf, but it doesn't have much effect. He has the idea of using the barriers to grab some trees from the forest and throws them all at the giant wolf. Now, he manages to deal some damage to the wolf. However, the wolf still gets up, and this time, Haruto simply takes part of the soil from that forest and decides to throw it at the wolf. At this moment, the wolf, or actually, a female wolf, as we heard her voice, becomes desperate and tells him to stop. Haruto doesn't understand who spoke and continues with the plan to crush the female wolf, but she yells again, and Haruto realizes that it was her who was speaking. After that, she apologizes to him and says that she was just considering eating him to replenish her mana. She didn't think he was so strong. She asks who the heck he is to be so powerful. Haruto tries to speak, but as he is just a baby, he hasn't learned to talk yet. He has an idea and creates a barrier that translates his thoughts into sound, allowing him to communicate with the giant wolf. He tells her his name and explains that he was born as the son of the king, but due to having a low level of mana, he was abandoned in that forest. The wolf says she doesn't understand, as she can see his mana, and it far surpasses human limits. After saying that, she deduces that he must be the demon king. Haruto, fearful of denying it and being perceived as weak, confirms and claims to be the demon king, even though he isn't. The wolf says that now it makes sense for him to be so strong, and she quickly surrenders, asking him to order her around. Haruto, on the other hand, says it's not necessary and asks her only not to attack him anymore. That would be enough. The wolf then swore to protect him with her life and reveals at that moment that she is a fire fenrir. After that, Haruto expresses his gratitude and calls her Flay for short. At this moment, she tells him that he not only spared her life but also gave her a new name. Because of this, the pact of master and servant is now established. Flay assures him that she will serve him forever. However, Haruto starts feeling weak and collapses to the ground. He is very debilitated as he hasn't been breastfed until now. Upon hearing this, Flay transforms into her human form and says that she will breastfeed him. Haruto becomes very embarrassed upon seeing her undressed, and he quickly asks her to put some clothes on. He creates a barrier around her, and suddenly, a tight-fitting leather outfit appears on her body, which still leaves Haruto feeling embarrassed as she looks quite sensual. After that, Flay says she will breastfeed him soon and then removes her clothes again, claiming that she can only breastfeed him after getting pregnant and instructs Haruto to put his seed inside her. At this moment, Haruto realizes that Flay is indeed clueless. After realizing that it won't be possible for her to breastfeed him, Flay dresses again and apologizes to him. While they are talking, Flay hears someone approaching and goes to see who it is. A man in armor appears and approaches them. The man says that he came to take the child, but Flay immediately refuses to give him up, stating that Haruto has just become her master, so he belongs to her. The knight explains that the child is a relative of his and was abandoned for certain reason, but he came to save him. He also thought that the child might be hungry, so he brought breast milk for him. Haruto gets excited because he hasn't eaten for a long time. However, Flay denies and says that she will breastfeed him herself. The man then tells her that she won't be able to raise a human child either. He proposes an idea to her, suggesting that he will take the child, and she can come along as his servant. Flay agrees, saying that it's okay as long as she can stay by Haruto's side. And so, the knight pretends that the boy has already gone to bed, and they head towards the knight's house. At this moment, there is a time skip in the anime, and Haruto is now 9 years old. He lives happily with his new adoptive family and even has a little sister with whom he doesn't get along very well. Haruto feels very sad that he can't make his sister like him. On the other hand, she adores Flay and asks to play with her later. Some time later, Haruto is in his bed, contemplating how to leave home and venture into that world. He even created a magical robot that looks just like him, but unfortunately, it still can't move or talk. Later, his father says that from that day on, he will teach Haruto how to use the sword, as he still believes that Haruto's magic levels are low, and he needs to be able to fend for himself in case something bad happens. They start training, and Haruto charges at his father with a wooden sword. The boy delivers such a strong attack that it breaks the wooden sword on the ground and creates a large hole where the blow landed. Impressed, his father decides to test his reflexes. He says he will attack Haruto with all his strength, and Haruto must try to dodge the blow. His father attacks, and at the last moment, Haruto manages to dodge, leaving his father amazed. He explains that such a feat is usually only possible for people at level 30 or higher, something quite challenging in that world. His father decides to continue training him as he sees great potential in Haruto, but his movements are still amateurish. At this moment, Haruto remembers that one day he tried to see if he had 3 digits of magic power, but to his disappointment, he found another 0 before the 2, making him think that he was really weak, considering that the strongest human has only 77 units of magic power. Here, we see that Haruto is way above average, as he possesses an incredible 1002 units of power, much higher than the strongest human. Later that night, Haruto's mother and father talk about him. His father mentions that Haruto's training started today and that he was surprised by his strength. He even suspects that Haruto might be the reincarnated demon king, as there are some stories that indicate this has happened in the royal family. His mother is not convinced, as he doesn't have horns or a tail, but his father suggests that the royal mark may have inhibited the growth of those features. And perhaps this is why the demon Flay shows so much respect for him. Haruto's mother refuses to believe this and says that Haruto is just a normal child like any other. Well, she couldn't be more wrong, right? Haruto's father agrees that he thinks the same, and regardless of what happens, he will make their son happy. And today's video starts with Haruto commenting that his father has been really busy lately. The good part about this is that he doesn't have to train in fencing every day. But suddenly, while monitoring one of his barriers, Haruto overhears a woman talking about injuries and bandages. He decides to take a look and see what's going on. He observes that there are several badly wounded soldiers and goes to talk to his father. His father explains that there's been a wave of bandit attacks in the region where they live. He went to take care of them, but unfortunately, he fell into an ambush, and many of his men ended up injured. His father is deeply sorry and can't understand how he fell into such a trap. Haruto, seeing his frustrated father, becomes very angry with the bandits who caused all of that. They walk among the soldiers slowly, and continue walking. As he passes by, he places various healing barriers on all the wounded, and quickly, everyone heals and is happy about it. Haruto's father is astonished and can't make sense of what happened. That night, Haruto gets up and opens the door. He sees Flay standing there and tries to talk to her, but she doesn't utter a single word. Haruto remembers that he told her to shut up earlier, and the goofy fox is still following that order. Haruto recalls the command, says he's sorry, and apologizes to her. He tells her she can speak freely again, and Flay apologizes if she offended her master in any way. Haruto asks Flay to come with him quickly. He uses his monitoring barriers to try to locate the base of the bandits who attacked his father, and soon he finds it. He sees that they are exactly where his father was attacked, and upon seeing this, he suspects that someone on their side is feeding information to the supposed bandits. Haruto then decides, with Flay's help, to take down all the bandits at once. They fly off, but as they leave, Haruto's little sister sees them flying and is greatly impressed. Next, they arrive at the location and observe the alleged bandits talking about ambushing Haruto's father. Haruto says he now understands what happened. He uses a barrier that immobilizes everyone, and one of them starts blabbering. Haruto simply throws him against the wall with great force to set an example for the others. He says that if they don't want the same fate as their comrade, they must answer the questions he has. They spill the beans, and now Haruto knows that they aren't bandits at all. They are soldiers from the neighboring empire who infiltrated disguised as bandits. They mention that there was an accomplice who facilitated their entry into the empire, but they claim they don't know anything beyond that. Haruto, deep in thought, says that this couldn't have been done without an authority higher than his father's and starts wondering if someone from that kingdom would have an interest in getting rid of his father. Haruto thanks them for the information and has Flay burn down everything in that location. At this point, the not-so-bandits complain that they did everything he asked, and therefore, he should let them go. Haruto, on the other hand, says he doesn't care about them in the slightest, and he also remembers that they ambushed his father and could have even killed him if they had the chance. And for that reason, he would never forgive them. Flay obeys his command and turns everything into ashes. Haruto says he doesn't know much about the Empire's conflicts, but they started it, so he shouldn't show mercy. He adds that for now, he'll send an anonymous letter to his father explaining the whole situation. The next day, this letter reaches his father, who is shocked because, despite his defeat at the hands of the enemy soldiers, he's incredulous that one person could have defeated them all. Did Haruto's sister hear everything, while she was in her father's lap? After hearing this, she says she has something to do and leaves. Outside, she remembers seeing her brother and Flay flying and puts the pieces together, implying that they were the ones who handled the whole situation. She goes to talk to Flay and asks her if there are two of her brother, since last night she saw him flying with Flay, but when she checked his room, she saw him sleeping. What she doesn't know is that the person she saw sleeping, it's just a magically created doll. Flame is surprised that you've already liked and subscribed to the channel. Don't let her down, make sure to subscribe. In fact, she's surprised that Charlotte noticed Haruto's incredible power, and she starts telling everything to the little girl. She says he was blessed with immense power, so much so that not even her, a high-level demon, can fight against him. After that, Leia is going to tell Haruto that she found out everything. And after that, Charlotte and her sister start following him everywhere, but whenever he tries to talk to her, she always runs away, leaving Haruto sad and thinking that his little sister hates him. This pursuit continues for several days, and at one point, while Haruto is resting, an alarm sounds, and he realizes that the Imperial soldiers have decided to attack his mother and sister. Wouldn't have time to arrive. Meanwhile, his mother tries to protect herself using magic and running with Charlotte. While they flee, Haruto uses a barrier to communicate with his sister and guides them to the best escape route, until they reach a cliff and jump down using magic to cushion their fall. Down there, they find a cave and hide inside it. Haruto's mother sees that the place is filled with glowing moss, and this way, she's certain they won't be able to hide. They definitely wouldn't be able to hide. She leaves Charlotte in the cave and tells her she will meet with the person who guided her to seek help. In the meantime, she should stay put inside the cave. She says she's not sure who the person is, but one thing she knows is that he's the hero of justice, someone who defends others. Charlotte cries and asks her mother not to go, but her mother says it's okay and she should just wait quietly, everything will be fine. Then she goes out and comes face to face with the Imperial soldier. They find it odd to encounter his mother and quickly instruct their men to search for the child. She realizes she can't be captured, so she has the brilliant idea to take her own life. What a crazy woman, seriously. But before she can carry out this nonsense, the knife shatters, and she faints. At this moment, we see who did it. And guess who it was? None other than our hero, Haruto. Seeing his mother unconscious makes him really angry, and with a single attack, he defeats all the Imperial soldiers. After that, he takes his mother to Charlotte, saying she's alive and will be alright soon. Haruto tries to disguise his voice so she won't recognize him, but Charlotte senses his dark aura and immediately knows it's Haruto who's talking. And before he leaves, she calls out to him, and Haruto realizes he's in trouble. Charlotte, a bit embarrassed, asks if Haruto is the hero of justice who saves people when they need help. Haruto doesn't understand, but decides to go along with his sister's idea so as not to scare her. Charlotte says she knew since the day she saw him flying with Flea, and finally, she approaches him. She admits she was totally wrong about Haruto. She thought he was a demon or something because of his eerie aura. Haruto tells her she must keep it a secret, since no one can know the identity of the hero of justice. She agrees and says she'll do it, even if she has to lie to her father. After that, Haruto says he'll take care of the bad guys outside, and in the meantime, she should look after their mother. Charlotte agrees, and he leaves. That night, Haruto's father is informed that his wife and Charlotte are both safe. They tell him that Flea found them and is escorting them right now. Plus, some guards were injured, but when they were found, they were completely healed. Gold, Haruto's father, says he'd like to thank the person who saved his wife and daughter. But apparently, the person who did it has no intention of revealing themselves. Little does he know that the person who saved them was right there beside him. He asks Haruto what he thinks of this person. Haruto, trying to hide his identity, answers that he'll stand by his side as long as they don't do anything wrong. And his father adds that Charlotte is calling this person the hero of justice, but for now, they'll just observe him. Haruto slips up and says that even if Imperial soldiers come pretending to be bandits to attack, the so-called hero of justice would take care of them. And at that moment, his father asks him how he knows about the Imperial soldiers when he never mentioned it. Haruto tries to play it off and says it's obvious, since the bandits should attack, and not a stronghold like that, and he assumed that was the case, especially since they even went after his mother. Haruto also says it's strange they managed to infiltrate even after his father increased security at the border. His father then imagines they must have entered before the security measures were put in place. He says that sometimes Haruto doesn't seem like a 9-year-old boy, and in his thoughts, Haruto apologizes and says he's actually quite mature. At that moment, Charlotte and her mother arrive and hug her father. Then, somewhat surprisingly, Charlotte comes running to Haruto and hugs him, causing confusion for everyone since she always kept her distance from him and never exchanged a word. As she hugs him, she says she loves her brother very much now. And upon seeing this, Flea becomes quite jealous, as she's always wanted to be that close to Haruto. She starts urging the girl to stay away from him. Today's video starts with Charlotte inviting Haruto to play, which in the first episode would have been completely unthinkable, since she always avoided him. Then she hugs him and sticks to him. Haruto in his thoughts says that since the incident in the forest, Charlotte has been coming to his room every day. He says he has no idea how to deal with her now that she likes him. But despite all this, he says it's not bad, it's like a little animal loving him. Look at the comparisons this guy makes, man. At one point, Charlotte sees a display on Haruto's table and asks what it is. Haruto says it's monitoring magic, and Charlotte becomes very interested. She says her brother is really amazing for using ancient magic so easily. Charlotte also mentions that there are some books about ancient magic in their library and asks Haruto if he wants her to take him there. Haruto agrees, and soon he begins to study ancient magic. He discovers that ancient magic could be non-elemental, unlike current magic that necessarily requires an element to be cast. He also learns that there are gods that can travel to different worlds. And in his thoughts, Haruto says he's seen this in an anime in his past life. Remembering anime, he regrets that it's been a long time since he's watched any, and that's his only complaint about living in that world. Charlotte asks what on earth this anime he's talking about is. And Haruto explains, saying it's basically moving pictures that speak. Charlotte is really impressed, since no images move in that world, and she becomes very interested. Haruto says he'll show her soon, but in his thoughts, he admits he has no idea how to do it. 2 weeks pass, and Haruto has managed to connect his magic to Earth's internet. Don't ask me how, he didn't explain that in the anime either. He says his anime subscription is still active, so he starts watching anime again. He brings Charlotte to watch, and she's really excited. He asks her to pick one, and she chooses one with a little girl. When she sees the girl moving and using magic, she's completely amazed. But Charlotte has a problem. She doesn't understand a single word they're saying. She asks Haruto to teach her Japanese. Haruto thinks it'll be hard for her to learn a new language, but he's wrong. Charlotte learns really fast, and Haruto is completely shocked that she mastered katakana in just 2 hours. For those who don't know, katakana is like the Japanese symbol alphabet you see on the screen. 2 weeks pass since then, and Charlotte comes to Haruto's room every day to watch anime. He's turned the girl into an otaku, dude. Before anyone gets funny in the comments, I know it's botom, but let's admit, otaku sounds way better. Haruto lets her watch, and in his thoughts, he says Charlotte learned Japanese from watching anime and basically already knows the language. Haruto thinks it's amazing and wonder if his little sister is actually a genius. He says if that's the case, he shouldn't just let her watch anime all day, but he feels bad taking it away since she's having so much fun. But Haruto decides and says he has to, as the older brother he has to be more strict. After finishing the episode she was watching, before she goes to the next one, he tells her to stop. Haruto says she can't watch a whole season in one go, and he decides to allow her to watch only 3 hours of anime a day. Charlotte is completely shocked, and asks why. Haruto responds that it's not healthy for kids to watch anime all day, but Charlotte argues that it doesn't make sense, since she feels really good. Haruto stands his ground and calls her, as it's dinner time. Charlotte becomes quite dejected after that. At dinner, Haruto's father says they've been spending a lot of time together and asks what they've been doing. Charlotte answers that they've been studying ancient magic all this time. Haruto's mother is happy that Charlotte is helping him, as it's always been her dream for them to get along. Then Haruto goes to take a bath, and Charlotte shows up in the bathroom right after. Haruto asks what she's doing there. She says that now that she has no more anime to watch, she has nothing to do and decided to take a bath. Haruto thinks and says there's nothing wrong with that, since they're both kids. But it does seem kind of weird to him, because his mind is that of an adult. While they're taking a bath, Charlotte looks at something on Haruto and becomes paralyzed, looking at it. But don't worry, it's not what you're thinking. She's looking at the mark on his chest, which we already know is the real mark. All those born of royalty have that mark. However, Haruto can't say that. And when she asks what that is, he simply replies that it's the mark of the hero of justice, and she must keep it a secret and not tell anyone. They finish bathing, and before going to sleep, Charlotte goes to say goodnight to her brother. Isn't that cute? After that, Haruto says goodbye and goes to his bed to sleep. So far, so good, but after a while, he feels something climbing onto his bed. And guess who it is? Yes, exactly, Charlotte. Before Haruto can even say anything, the girl falls asleep snuggling up to him. At that moment, Haruto sees his mother at the door of the room, appearing quite happy that they're so close. The next morning, Haruto's father leaves, saying he's going to take care of the remaining bandits in the area. Haruto's mother tells him to be careful. Charlotte then becomes worried about her father, but Haruto says she shouldn't worry, because this time, they are really inexperienced and untrained bandits, unlike those knights who pretended to be bandits before. And thus, his father will handle them easily with his men. Charlotte asks if there's no way for everyone to be happy without fighting, and Haruto responds that it's easier said than done. Charlotte asks if it's difficult even for him, who is the hero of justice. She adds that she thinks that's what his powers should be used for, leaving Haruto in a dilemma. He says there's no choice, and he'll agree to her request. And the girl, who's completely excited from watching anime so much, asks if he will transform and join the fight. Haruto doesn't understand, but he has to stay in character and decides to play along. He uses a barrier to change his clothes, and the little girl goes crazy. She thinks she's living in an anime, man. She asks to go with him, but Haruto flatly refuses, saying it's too dangerous for her, leaving her disappointed, but she agrees when he proposes setting up a monitoring barrier for her to watch everything while he's out. But with a condition: you who are watching, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Fair enough? Subscribe. Haruto leaves, and using his barriers, he encounters the bandits. He blocks their exit from the cave, and thus, he captures them all at once. He arrives at the scene and strikes some embarrassing poses. The bandits attack him, and Haruto defeats them all. After doing so, his father arrives and asks him some questions. He asks if it was him who defeated all the bandits alone, and also asks if it was him who saved his wife and daughter the other day. He says yes and strikes a pose, saying he's the executor of justice and will always save the weak and oppressed. Then he flies away. After arriving, Haruto is exhausted from portraying that character. But Charlotte is really excited and asks when he'll go out again. At that moment, Haruto realizes he's gotten himself into trouble. She'll always want him to do things like that. And so, he continued to battle again and again. And after a while, he became known as the Black Knight. I hope this doesn't trend on Twitter. Sometime later, Haruto finally manages to make his mannequin move and speak. He's really happy because now he can leave it in his place and explore the world. One day, Charlotte wakes up beside him and is very surprised to see two Harutos talking. She asks which one is hers. At one point, a maid knocks on the door saying it's almost time for him to leave. Haruto tells his clone to go in his place, but it refuses, because it's just as lazy as the original. Haruto then goes to his appointment. He meets the prince and princess, who are actually his blood siblings, but no one there except his father knows. It's easy to see that the prince is a sly one. He starts by saying the place is dirty, and that's what he expected from Hicks. Then he disrespects his own older sister, saying she's just a political tool, and she shouldn't act like they're equal. He's the future king, and she'll just be sent off to marry another noble. At one point, the brat comes to talk to Haruto and calls him adopted level 2, since everyone thinks Haruto only has 2 units of magical power. When the prince sees Haruto looking at him, he challenges him to a duel. Even though Haruto's father tries to avoid it, the sly prince insists. A while later, they are to duel, and the prince says he'll take it easy on Haruto because he's so weak. Haruto uses an appraisal skill to check his power, and finds that he's not so strong. Haruto uses a protection barrier on himself and lets him hit. The boy thinks he's making an impact and says he should fight if he can. Haruto then realizes he can fight, and suddenly appears behind the kid and taps his head. He gets up, but every time he does, he takes another beating, until he gives up. The princess is impressed that he's only level 2, and her father says he's simply accepted the way he is. At this point, the boy tries to appeal by using magic. Haruto simply uses an absorption shield, and it's of no use. Haruto asks him if he should return all his magic at once, and the prince quickly surrenders. That night, Haruto thinks that the people in the capital already knew he was level 2, and wonder if they're investigating. But he says it doesn't matter, since they discarded him without a second thought. And so, today's video comes to an end. Did you like it? Want more? Then let me know here in the comments, if you'd like. Also, give that sneaky like and subscribe so you don't miss any videos. Lastly, for those who really stuck around until the end, I've left an amazing video. It tells the story of Lucille, a worker who was a victim of a stray bullet in RJ, and was reincarnated as a super strong healer. Click on the screen here and check it out. It's amazing, okay? Until next time, bye.